Today's episode is going to hit deep for anybody in a leadership role or even aspiring to step into one, because we're not just talking about how to lead, but why most people struggle with leadership in the first place. Today's guest is Kipp Sorensen, someone I've had the privilege of knowing and calling a friend for quite a while now. What's unique about Kipp and why I'm excited for you to hear this today is that he's one of the very few leaders I know who approaches leadership in a similar way that I do, with purpose, with people first, and with a relentless focus on mindset over mechanics. You're going to hear us unpack things like a staggering Gallup statistic that 85% of leaders who are promoted actually lack the skills to lead effectively. And that's not just a stat. That's the story of why so many organizations struggle today with culture, burnout, and performance. And Kipp doesn't just talk about that number. He gives actionable perspective on how to close the gap and actually develop real leaders. This episode is packed with a ton of value, guys. Whether you're leading a team at work, raising a family at home, or just trying to be more intentional in your relationships, you're going to walk away with clear insight into how autonomy, trust, and service can completely transform your influence. I want you to stick around to the end as well, because we even tie it all back to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, parenting, and some hard lessons we both learned along the way.
And here's a crazy statistic from Gallup to help support what we're talking about is 85% of people that are promoted into a leadership position lack the skills and the abilities to be effective in the role. 85, AKA mostly every leader that you've ever worked for.
Wow.
Most of them don't have the necessary skills to be effective. And the reason why is because most companies do what a lot of us do, which is what? Man, I got this guy. He's really good as an individual contributor. Let's make him a leader over a bunch of individual contributors. And we think that the competence in the individual role is what makes him a great leader. And it's the furthest from the truth.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
Kipp Sorensen, excited to have you here, brother. Welcome.
Steve, it's good to be here. Yeah, it's good. I mean, we already been chatting and excited about what you're doing, man, and always happy to have a conversation. We don't even have to hit record. I'm okay having a conversation. So
Agreed, man. Agreed. I'm really excited today because I think, this podcast, we share a lot of the same values as far as leadership. We have a lot of the same type of background as far as where it comes from and things like that. So, I'm just excited for this conversation to hear your philosophies and really apply that not only to the business world, but across all aspects of life, marriage, family, the whole 9 yards.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, it's a testament of our alignment, right, around strategy of approach. And it's always a good sign when all of a sudden principles start showing up in all areas of life, right? When you're like, you can be at church and go, this seems like the same principle, just different language. Or you're like, apply that to raising kids. Well, what do you know? Same principle, right? And, and I think that's a testament of when you're on the right track around things, when it shows up in all areas of life, right? And so I think, me personally, when I think about leadership, it's transcendent, right? It's not position of authority. It's the choice to step into a position to impact and influence others, period. You could use that under the title of father, mother, boss, whatever, right? It's a choice, and thus that's leadership.
Yeah, and I go even one step simpler, right? I mean, we have these thoughts about what a leader looks like, right? And we put all these characteristics around it and everything, but really at the end of the day, what is leadership? It's people choosing to follow you. And this is a unpopular opinion, but even Hitler was a leader, right?
Absolutely.
Stalin, I'm
Highly
not going to say that
charismatic.
they were good leaders. Yes. And people chose to follow them, right? So when we talk about leadership in that aspect, your definition, my definition, which are a lot the same, what makes a good leader in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. I have to give this preface to what I'm about to say because people get sideways with this. So I want to make sure it's clear. So the first off, we can grab every leadership book there is, and everything's around, a lot of them are around tactics, right? How do you establish trust? How do you extend trust? How do you manage people? How do you drive accountability, right? How you, tactic. But where they mostly fail and where most leaders fail is in the space of mindset and intent. I'm a huge believer that most people, and this is just unfortunate. It's just an unfortunate reality that most people that are placed in a position of authority will practice unrighteous dominion. Most parents will use their authority unrighteously. Most leaders put in a position of authority will practice it unrighteously. They will do it wrong. And then they grab a leadership book that gives them what? Tools of manipulation is what they end up becoming. They end up becoming tools of lies and tools to promote themselves and their authority. So
never looked at it like that.
Yeah. So with that said, I have to always go back to why are you a leader? What's the mindset of a great leader? Because all those tools could be used for good and bad.
Right.
The difference is, why are you doing it? Right. So my definition of a good leader is one that honors autonomy and agency and choice and is in a position of trying to strive for the betterment of someone else. So my true intent has to be in the space of, what can I do to help Steve win in life? How do I help develop Steve? And how do I do it in a way that I honor Steve's choice, which is super critical in this kind of a fun conversation, but we never go to the space of control. The minute it's about control, you've lost yourself. It always has to be in, I present the environment and the possibilities, and I ask Steve if he wants to take it on. And if you do, I support you in doing so.
Nice. I used this old phrase with a boss one time. I told him, you can tell me what to do, or you can tell me how to do it, but you damn sure ain't going to tell me both. And that's really what you're talking about there, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, we have this goal. How would you like to meet it?
Totally. And what it is it's naive, right? A lot of leaders will utilize their position of authority to control for an outcome, but little do they realize that the number one psychological need of most humans is autonomy. So they're fools in thinking that they're going to dictate the control of the outcome of how it's done, when all they need to do is relinquish it and then support someone, right, in the execution. They'll get the result, but they'll get the result from a strategic perspective while developing the person, versus the other one, sure, great, control them. Let me know how that scales. After you control 20, 30, 40 people, you're a CEO trying to dictate the performance of every employee. Yeah, good luck. Right? You're going to be a complete asshole. Everyone's going to hate you, and you're not going to be able to scale.
And I would say that's one of the primary reasons that CEOs don't sit in that spot for very long. I've seen CEOs 2-3 years at best, but I've also seen a lot of that command control type culture in my life. And then all of a sudden they're out the door because the performance isn't there. It works for a little while, but it doesn't stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a crazy statistic from Gallup to help support what we're talking about is 85% of people that are promoted into a leadership position lack the skills and the abilities to be effective in the role. 85, AKA mostly every leader that you've ever worked for.
Wow.
Most of them don't have the necessary skills to be effective. And the reason why is because most companies do what a lot of us do, which is what? Man, I got this guy. He's really good as an individual contributor. Let's make him a leader over a bunch of individual contributors. And we think that the competence in the individual role is what makes him a great leader. And it's the furthest from the truth. It's the equivalent of, and this is, we'll make the correlation to other areas of life, but it's the correlation of Steve and I getting married, right? We find our spouses, we get married, they get pregnant, and we think we're going to be good parents. Why? Because I made a kid. That's not true. If anything, the minute you get pregnant, we should all be like, I need to get training. But we think for some odd reason, we should be able to do it. We because we got promoted or I was able to get someone pregnant. So thus I should be a good father. It's the furthest from the truth.
I was a little bit worried. I thought you were talking about us getting married.
No, sorry. Yeah, awkward.
I'm like, where's this one going to go?
Where's this one going? Yeah.
You think about that too. And, I can't, right out of the gate, any new leadership role that I ever took, I can't think of one time that I actually got trained to be a leader. I got trained in tactics like what you were talking about, let's go to communication 101, but not really the essence of leadership. And I found that amazing. Hell, a lot of the jobs that I took over the years, they showed me where my office was, right? I had to go introduce myself to my people, ask them about their lives, things like that. But you're right, parenthood, we seem to think that we're going to learn that from our parents. And I think that's probably why we have so many generational problems. I want the best for my kids, and my dad wanted the best for me, but he didn't specifically train me how to be a father. I was just taking in what I saw.
Yeah, totally. Well, and if you correlate that to leaders, I think there's a default natural negative reaction to the role of leader. Look at people. People demonize anybody in a leadership role. Why? Because it's been done poorly for so long. And so the probability that most up and coming leaders have a great role model to go off of is really, really low. Because most leaders were authoritarians and managers.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you talk about role models, Kipp. Going back a little bit, talking about, role models and people who might have been influential with you. Did you always kind of feel this way, or was there awakening somewhere along the line of what good leadership looks like?
Yeah, I think luckily let me say it this way. It's really funny to look back at my work history. I wouldn't have assumed that I had a lot of leadership experience, right? But then once I write down on paper, I'm like, okay, wait a second. At age probably 24 was my first leadership role, where I ran a software development team. And in hindsight, I thought it was small fries, but looking back at it, I'm like, actually, that was pretty young, Kipp, right? Good job, right? And so I had a lot of opportunities really early on in my career, and I had nuggets of great leaders. Right. I remember one of my first kind of career jobs. It was a director over IT, and it was little things like, for instance, I'd be rolling out a new something. I don't even remember what it was. Actually, I actually do remember what it was. We're innovating this entire company process, supply chain, automated. We're talking before tablets. We were automating work orders into maintenance trucks via air cards. It was pretty high tech, right, for the construction industry. And I remember that CTO asked me to prepare the executive summary and present it to the executive team. And I was, 20 something years old. And I remember thinking, why would you do that? Right? He's put me on the spot presenting, and he did it for no other reason other than to support me. That's it. Right. It would have been better for him if he did it. He could have looked good. He could have presented himself. He could have built himself up. Look at my team. Look what we've done. But he didn't. He had some young whippersnapper that would probably maybe mess up the presentation, right? Come across not as professional as he would, and present to the executives on this innovative idea that was going to save them, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he decided to let me present on that. And so there's little nuggets of leaders doing that for me, throughout my career. I even remember, and I'll even call him out by name. I had a boss by the name of Chris Lake, and he recruited me from a job, called me up and said, "Hey, Kipp, I want you to come kind of run our software development arm of our consulting company." I'm like, sure. I was all flattered. I'm like, send me the resume. He sends me the resume. I look over the resume and I don't qualify at all, right? Half the things on this job description, I'm like, not resume. He sent me over the job description. And I read over the job description. I'm like, he doesn't think, he doesn't know me, right? He obviously misunderstands my skill set, right? And I remember calling him back and saying, "Chris, dude, sorry, man, but yeah, I didn't even know how to do half this." And he goes, "Kipp, you're the right person. And I believe that anything that there's a gap, you'll figure it out." And then he said, "How much do you need to make for you to come on board and just give it your all?" I gave him a number and he's like, "Done." And that's how I got the job. Wow. Now, what type of loyalty did I have to him? Insanely high. And he believed in me way more than I believed in myself, right? And that set a tone of him as a leader where for years, if he called me up and said, hey, Kipp, join me over here, I would have left in a second, right? And I absolutely was not the only one that had that same mentality, right? Everyone wanted to work for him because he was that kind of individual. So I had little pockets, right, of leaders like that throughout my entire career. Yeah.
This Chris Lake gentleman, he sounds a lot like John Ross, who is a good mentor of mine. John, one day, he came straight up and told me, he goes, Steve, I believe 100% that you are going to crush this. And it was different words than that.
Yeah.
But he goes, the only one who can prove me wrong is you.
That's spot
and
on.
It's like, okay, I got my break back up. I'm ready to climb. But yeah, it's amazing when you get those kind of people in your life who believe in you more than you, and that's, be honest with you, that's why I'm here today, as far as, starting my own thing and getting away from the W-2 job, is because people believed in me like that.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it goes to the testament of what makes a great leader. Right. And I think at the root of that is the desire to serve.
Absolutely.
Right. And those individuals took a risk to themselves, really, right, to be able to extend that to us and give us a chance and a fair shake where, if you didn't climb that mountain correctly, if you failed, it would come back on them. I mean, and that's the burden of leadership is the ability to extend in the belief of someone else, knowing that if they fail, it's on you.
I think that also forces a couple other things that are really good in leadership as well. And that's, they make sure that they coach you well beforehand and also debrief afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you bring up a good point, right? If our boss, right, it has the mindset of like, oh, you fail, it's on you, you're the one getting fired. Well, there's no meat in the game for me as a leader to make sure that you're developed and ready. Right. Because I'm not going to take ownership of it. You'll be the scapegoat and I'll throw you under the bus. Right. So, you want a leader that has stakes in your accomplishment, knowing that they'll take the brunt of it. And it forces you as a leader to ensure that you're serving those people and supporting them appropriately. Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. Yeah. So have there been any major failings in your leadership over time? And, of course, right.
Of course. Yeah.
Can you bring us back to a couple of those and some things that you learned? Because I think it's really important for men and women to understand that in leadership, you're going to fail. There's going to be times that you fail.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, let me think of a good nugget, like a good failure of my part. I think, there's a couple things that come to mind. I think the first one is, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you three. How's that? So the first is clarity. I think far too often I had expectations of what winning looked like for a team member, but those expectations were in my mind, right? And I was not clear on what they were. And most importantly, I'd still held them accountable to, right? So Steve, you deliver some work and it's like, no, right? But up front, I wasn't clear, right? Exactly what was required, So clarity up front, super, super important. The other thing is letting go of my arrogance of what the desired outcome needs to be. And what I mean by that is I had failures as a leader where I had very high standards in regards to a deliverable to a client. And I took my standard as the standard, the right way. And what would happen is if I had a team member that did a great job, but it was a different version of mine, I saw it as less than, and then I'd want to swoop in and rescue them or persecute them to have their standard match mine. When in reality, maybe the client liked theirs just as good as mine, right? And so I had to let go of my definition of right and let them have the flexibility to create their own version of it, knowing, and this is the foundational principle of this, knowing that the highest echelon of learning is in the space of creation, not in the space of requirement or meeting someone else's expectation. Those are two different things, right? Someone doing exactly what I tell them is one thing. Someone figuring out and making their own version of it, that's the highest version of learning, right? And so even if it's not how I would do it, I need to let go of that a little bit and let them do them, right? And their version that helps them grow. But also, who said that my version was better anyway, right? Like that's pride, that's my ego, that's other things. And so that would get in the way of trying to micromanage outcomes, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And on that last point, and then I'll go back to the first one. On that last point, we homeschool, so we use a Socratic method a lot. As someone's creating like that, you can ask those probing questions, which just drives further understanding and further learnings and things like that. Going back to the first one, the clarity, I think that's huge, right? When you're in a leadership role, I'm always 3 to 5 years ahead in anything that I'm doing, right? And most people don't think that way. They're making this tinker toy or, whatever they do for their job role. But to be able to articulate a vision out there, 3 to 5 years where you're wanting to go, even if it's to the end of a project, and to be able to have them paint that picture again that's when everybody gets aligned. I was just with a client a couple weeks ago, and it was one of the senior staff. And I'm like, what is the goal of the guy who leads this manufacturing plant? What is his top 3 goals? I don't know. I do what corporate tells me to do. So, in my mind, I said this a lot more flowery, but I'm like, Kipp, if you don't know what the guy who's responsible for the P&L wants, what kind of issues does that propose for anything that you try to do, right?
Yeah. How do you raise your hand that goes, hey, maybe this idea is not working because it's out of alignment with the overall objective? But you don't. I just did what I was told. It's like, yeah.
And of course that had to do with corporate structures and, all that sort of jargon, all the stuff that gets in the way of true leadership, right? And, that gentleman who was running the ship probably should have articulated it to the whole team as well. But anyways, it's highly important on the clarity aspect for sure. So just kind of looking through all this as well, I'm just going to call it out right now. You're also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? I don't know what kind of rank you're at right now, but
yeah, just no stripes. Yeah, that's another 10 years. Yeah, I don't know how long that will take.
I think the whole goal of jiu-jitsu is to build patience, right?
Yeah. No, it's to destroy your ego. It's just to destroy your ego. There's no ego left after training for so long.
True story. I got to get back, man. I stopped when we moved back here to Nebraska. But anyways, how does this all relate to being on the mat as well and the guys that you're working with on the mat?
Dude, I swear, literally it's been on my mind. In fact, I've been writing, I don't know what I'm writing. I don't think it's a book, but I've been writing leadership concepts related through jiu-jitsu for the last few years. And I just jot them down all the time. I don't share them too often just because I feel like most people that don't train won't see it as valuable. You know what I mean? But man, the correlations they're everywhere, right? Like jiu-jitsu is life, right? This is why guys that get into training, it's not like a hobby. It's a lifestyle, right? It's their therapy. It's their physical conditioning. It's their release of stress and pressure. Right? I mean, I could go for hours of the correlations, but I'll draw on one, right? And here's the one that I mentioned earlier. I said that as a good leader honors choice. Okay, awesome. Let's bring that to the mat. How do I honor choice? No. The idea is you're supposed to control people. Right? In jiu-jitsu, right? We control them. We don't let them choose. No, actually, it's not true. Right? If you're really good at jiu-jitsu, you let people do what they are trying to do and you use it against them, but you don't force them. In fact, good jiu-jitsu practitioners, you'll notice like higher belt guys, they're calm. They're not resisting every movement, right? If the guy wants to move that way, I'm like, okay, great. I'll move out of the way and let you move that way. And I'll use that to my benefit, right? To get a better position or a submission. But when I'm trying to meet muscle or pressure against pressure, it doesn't work. I'll gas out, and it invites other people to do what? Resist against your pressure. So, as Bruce Lee would say, right? It's like being water. Let them run off, let them go the direction they want to go, and you let them, and they'll willingly choose, and you use that to your advantage.
Right. And meet that goal, obviously, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing is, which I find fascinating, I joke around about this often, I remember years ago, I can't remember, it was like a belt test or something, and my wife was going to come to the gym, or maybe she came to the gym for my birthday to drop off stuff, because I always like to train on my birthday. And she was like, "Oh, who's this so-and-so person?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Chad," right? And this is back in the day when I didn't know much about Chad and we were probably blue belts or whatever. She's like, "Oh, tell me about Chad." I'm like, "Oh, he's a really great guy, blah, blah, blah." She's like, "What does he do for work?" And I'm like, I don't know. Is he married? I think so. Does he have kids? I have no idea. She has all these questions. I knew nothing, but I knew Chad. In fact, I would argue I knew Chad better than most people know Chad, right?
Probably even his wife.
Yeah, because in the space of training, man, you know people's battles. You know when they're having a bad day. You know if something's going on. It shows up in their training. So you get hyper aware of how other people are interacting with you on the mat. And I think a good leader does the same, right? I'm not dealing with employees like just tactics. You're dealing with emotional beings. Right? I mean, think of it this way, right? Number one contributing factor to a reduction of effectiveness of a workforce is employee engagement. That's what we call employee engagement. And you might call it like employees silently quitting, and there's other languages for it, right? But let's just say a disengaged workforce. Well, why are they disengaged? 100% psychology. That's it. There's no like, they lack process or they need communication. No. Their interpretation of the work that they're doing, they're frustrated with it. Why? Good question. You got to figure that out. But it's all psychology that dictates employee performance. But yet, how often do you hear about addressing psychology from a leadership perspective? Nope. Process the shit out of everything. SOPs. We must communicate more, right? It's all tactics and hacks, not dealing with the individual, right?
And it's the hardest answer to come to, but it's also the best one, right?
Yeah.
I think that people come to work when they first come for the pay and the benefits, right? Because they're getting into a contract with the company or what have you. But after they're there, it's really about bringing value and feeling valued. If you can hit those two, it's cake.
Totally. And it's a known thing. Those are psychological needs of people. The three primary ones: autonomy in the work that you're doing, a sense of mastery, growth and development, and strong sense of connection, belonging. But yet so much leadership strategy does not address those three things, right? And they're fundamental to being human, right? It's wild to me. Yeah.
So it's interesting because, of course you come from the tech space. I come from the manufacturing side. I don't know if this correlates or not, but in the manufacturing side, we might have someone doing this widget over here. And, the senior leadership, the C-suite, all that, they're like, they just do this widget. They don't need to know why or anything like that. They come to work to do the widget.
Yeah, just do your widget.
People want to understand where they fit in this machine, and really understand that at a deep level so that they know how they're impacting lives out there. I truly believe that. I wish all people in leadership would believe the same.
Yeah. Well, and those same leaders, not these ones in particular, right? But a lot of those same leaders that are like, well, they don't need to know. They just need to operate in their box and make their widget, are the same damn leaders that will bitch and moan when there's a problem on the line and the employees didn't innovate and figure it out. Well, why didn't they raise their hands? Why didn't they innovate? Why didn't they figure it out? Why did they just stay in their lane? Because you told them year after year to stay in your lane, keep your head down, and just do the task. And now you have the gall to complain about them not innovating and looking beyond their daily tasks. Shame on you, right? Like, people are operating in the space that you have promoted as the priority. This is crazy to me. Like, I'm a little bit of a tangent. I'm getting riled up here, Stephen. So I remember I had a conversation with a CEO around moonlighting, for instance. Interesting topic, right? If we say moonlighting policies, what do we allow, what we allow, yada, yada, yada. And the discussion was absolutely allow moonlighting. Yeah, but it's company time. It's company assets and whatever. It's like, yeah, but does it conflict with their job or is it competing against the company? If it's not, who cares? Right. And they're like, well, yeah, but we want to make sure that they're investing their time in the company. I'm like, great. But if you make time the priority, then time is what you will get. Right. You want to strengthen down and micromanage and say, we want 8 hours, and you make that the priority, an employee will give you 8. And after 8, they're out. Absolutely. So what do you want? Do you want an innovative employee that's bought into something bigger than themselves, that will innovate and see the outcomes and the results that we're all working towards? Or do you want an employee that stays in their lane and gives you exactly what you told them to get? It's up to you, but we promote one or the other, depending on how you lead.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking about a manufacturing example here, and I had a similar type incident, right? I truly believe that, probably about 99.8% of the people who come to work every day want to do a good job. I start there every day.
I believe too. Yeah, positive intent. Assume positive intent. Absolutely.
Right. Of course, you're going to have the 0.2% shitbirds out there. I mean, they're out there. So I leave a little bit of a gap for that. But, this is a knockdown drag out. But in manufacturing, since there can be severe consequences for safety, there's severe rules in place. Lockout, tag out, for example,
Yeah.
But I was always on the other side. How about before we suspend this person for 5 days, which is going to affect their family, piss them off for life, and, it's going to be a company issue, not a self issue.
Yeah.
Why don't we think about asking them some serious questions just off the table, right? We've had 4 or 5 times in the past couple of years that we've had to suspend for lockout, tag out. Let's bring them in a room and go, hey, we're not going to suspend you, but why do you do this? Let's bring them into the conversation. The end goal is that we don't want people to go inside of a machine that's powered up and they could potentially hurt themselves. It's not whether they put the lock on or not, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, and sometimes we just need people to see the bigger picture, right? Like, who in their right mind does not get aligned with Steve when he says, hey, we follow these processes so someone doesn't die? Do you not think that's kind of important? The average person goes, yeah, totally makes sense. But until you have that conversation with them, what don't we learn? Well, actually, there's a competing priority. You guys say that, but in the same sentence, you said this priority is this other thing, and that's in direct conflict with us having safety. Shit, we didn't realize that, right? Like, assume positive intent, right? Back to what we were saying. Most people aren't intentionally going, oh, you know what? Let me not put that lock on because I hope someone will go in there and die, right? It's like, no, there's a reason why. Why? Oh, because you guys are putting too much downward pressure. You're having us hit a number that we do not believe is possible. And every little second counts. And I'm taking shortcuts because I'm afraid that I might get fired if I don't have the right numbers in. So I take a shortcut on the edge, assuming that no one will go into the machine. Okay, our bad, right? And we realign.
Exactly. Or simply they don't have the tools to do their job. Second shift, put it in their locker. Whatever
Totally.
the case may
or,
be.
Or no one onboarded the guy, right? Like, he didn't even know. And he didn't want to tell anybody because he was afraid that he might throw someone under the bus and have an employee mad at him or something. I mean, who knows, right? Root cause.
Tons of, Yep. Get down to the root cause. But, I think it's hard for people in leadership roles to, go, hey, maybe it's our fault, right? Maybe it's us, not you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that comes up a lot. Comes up a lot in leadership and in my experience anyways.
Absolutely.
So switching gears here a little bit, Kipp, we're talking about, the workplace, in the workplace, of course, we have these people out there, people that come in with positive intent. We also have the shitbirds. Dealing with those 0.2%. I should probably stop calling them the shitbirds. They're probably,
I know what you're talking about though. No.
They've probably been jaded, by, conditions at home or conditions in another workplace or the union, whatever the case may be, right? So dealing with them is a little bit different than dealing with someone who, is still engaged. Or let's just talk about the people who become disengaged. Do you believe those people can still be salvaged and brought back?
Yeah, this is how I see it, is I don't know, and it's not up to me. I clarify the expectations of what winning looks like. I give them the opportunity and I ask them if they're willing to do what's necessary to win. If they say they will, I'll support them. If they don't, I'll not support them. And we'll exit them. It's all their choice still, right? And I try to maintain that as much as possible. I have to remind myself, right? Because it's natural for us to get to the space of like, save them, control them, get them. No, that's not my job. That's their choice. It's their choice. I honor that choice. It's my job to create the clarity so they can make the right choice, right? Now, it's really important. We got to hold them accountable, right? We don't create organizations of, hey, everyone just choose whatever you want to do, right? It's like, no, we provide clarity of what's required. I ask for commitment. If they make the commitment, I hold them accountable to their commitment a couple times. And then eventually I say, hey, you're affecting the team, you're affecting the organization because you're not able or willing to do what's necessary to be successful in your role. You can't work here anymore. That's it. That's all on them. It's all on
But
them.
Kipp, that's a hard conversation. Those are so hard.
Dude, I know. Well, and it's crazy because I used to think that too, right? Like I remember, I mean, I've had to lay off a lot of people over the years, and some of them I did in a really poor job because I approached it wrong. And here's the red flag for me anyway, is why am I uncomfortable? Like, why does this conversation require a sense of courage? And in most cases, it's not about them. It's about me. I'm concerned about what that person thinks about me. I don't want them mad about me. It's very, very selfish. Most of us don't want to have those conversations because we're concerned about ourselves. But what we need to do is serve the individual, even in the termination, right? And luckily, I think I've gotten good enough at this. I don't say this to like prop myself up or anything, but just to prove that the principles are sound, is I've terminated people that have thanked me and apologized to me during the termination, right? Like that's a good sign. That means that they had all the variables. They could control the outcome, not me. They did. And they were clear that in the moment of termination, that it was their decision or lack of action on their part and only theirs that resulted in this. And so they're like, sorry, you gave me a good shake. I wasn't able to pull it off, whatever. And I don't promote that type of termination so I feel better about myself. It's not about that. That person leaves the organization with what knowledge? With ownership,
Yes.
with responsibility. And it's only in ownership and responsibility can someone go, man, I made a mistake. I'm going to deal in reality. And this is what I'm going to do different next time. Those people will learn and grow. But the employee where you fail to set clarity of expectation, where you demonize them and you didn't give them a fair shake, those employees that get terminated, guess what they do? I don't know why I got terminated. Steve's an asshole. The company's a jerk or whatever. And they leave being victims. I did nothing wrong. I got unfairly terminated is what they'll do. So they won't learn and grow. So you need, as a leader, it's your responsibility to ensure that they're in control of the outcome and that they take ownership and responsibility as part of the termination. That way they can grow from the experience. Otherwise they won't.
So that's interesting too, because in the second case, I would also assume that those people are the ones who, if there's annual evals, they're only taking the opportunity once a year to talk to the people. Right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, don't even start out on the bad idea of annual reviews. Such a horrible idea. I mean, think about it. I work for you, Steve, for 12 months. And then after 12 months, you give me some coaching about what I've been doing wrong for 12 months. Are you joking? Talk about a bad idea.
Oh, I agree.
But whatever.
I agree. You know, if your team size is proper and under 10, right, there is no reason that at least every 2 weeks that you're sitting down individually with each one of those people. And if you can't do that, there's something wrong with your processes.
Yep, absolutely. Or the company's not set up to scale, and or you're doing what most leaders are stuck doing, and they're dabbling being an individual contributor with leading people, and you're fighting the battle of performance, individual performance with team performance, right? And you got to double down on the team. You got to let go of that individual stuff.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah.
And I always get taken back a little bit with these people who's, I've heard guys say it in the past. I got to go break some bad news to one of my team members, right? Guys, there is no bad news. There's no bad news. There's just news, right? It's not good. It's not bad. It's just communication, you know? And if you continue to do it, then, it doesn't get up to this point where it's bad news. People understand when we communicate with them, just as you were saying, the expectation and the clarity and all that. If you continue that up with constant communication, it doesn't get to that bad point. They know exactly where they're at.
Totally. Well, and to bring back something we talked about earlier is the importance of positive intent, right? And the mindset that we have. If your mindset of a leader is people are the problem, well, guess what? They're going to pick up in the conversation. That
I'm the problem.
Yeah, there you can use your sandwich method BS tactics all you want, right? But the reality of it is the person's going to feel that you're there to demonize them, right? Or is the conversation you're going to have with them around identifying root cause? Or is it curiosity? Man, Steve, I don't know where we went wrong. My expectation is that you should be here, but you're here. I have no idea why. Help me understand. And if you're not getting curious, right, around what's causing certain behavior or why are we underperforming, and you're going into the conversation of, oh, I need to correct Steve, bring down the hammer, right, and get Steve to do something that he's not doing because it's a character flaw. Well, of course, Steve's going to feel that, right?
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a disaster. So to be frank, it's a hard conversation. Why? Because you assume they're the problem. That's why. And it's your mindset going into the conversation is the issue.
Agreed. So we're both husbands and fathers as well. You know, when you're in the workplace, of course, you can talk differently to people. You're not, I mean, you should be emotionally engaged with these people, but not at the same level as your wife and kids. And let's be honest, you can't fire your wife or kids. Well, you can your wife, probably not your kids.
Not your kids. Yep. Can't fire them. Can't control them either.
So if you bring these tactics into your home, or not tactics, talents,
principles.
Let's get away from the principles. There we go.
Yeah.
How does that look with your kids and the autonomy, especially, you know, and your wife with the autonomy? I think we're both on the same plane that, you know, we lead our homes. I mean, not in the same aspect as work, but we lead our homes. We lead our wives. We lead our children.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, how's this? The natural tendency to practice unrighteous dominion is even higher at home. As much as we can't fire our kids, guess what they can't do to you? They can't quit you either. They're stuck with you. And this is why the natural tendency is when kids aren't listening to us, that especially men, that we do what? Bring the hammer, bring the heat, raise our voice, micromanage, command and control, get the room clean, persecute. Sure,
absolutely.
The room will get clean, right? But what's required tomorrow? Same tactics and the day after. Meanwhile, you erode your relationship and the trust that you have in your children. And they will do as you command, but they won't follow you. And in the process, you rob them of autonomy. And by the way, when we act out of requirement and not out of choice, there's a level of confidence in learning that is not available to us. You want your kids to do their chores because they choose to, not because they're told to. And the reason why is because that allows them to grow and learn and build confidence, right? If I'm acting out of fear and all my decisions are, well, I got to do this to keep dad off my back, is that out of choice or is that passivity? Man, do you want kids that end up living their lives as adults that they're not making any conscious choice of what they do and what they don't do, and that what they're doing is constantly what the boss wants? They are constantly doing what their spouse wants just to keep their spouse happy, and they're making zero choice in life and intentionality about how they show up? Or do you want someone that's intentional, that says, oh, I want to do this because I see the outcome of this. I know what the consequences are. I'm going to make a conscious choice to make a decision, understanding the full picture. Is that what you want as an adult? If so, you got to develop your kids in the same exact way. The principles are transcendent in every way, right? And one that I use often just to kind of like drive this thought home is influence pyramid. And the thought here is, and I'm stealing this from Arbinger Institute. They have, I think they call it the influence pyramid, but at the very top of this pyramid is correction. And most people move to correction immediately, right? We see something wrong with an employee. We see something wrong with our kid. What do? We correct. And far too often, we're not in a position of influence. We're in a position of authority, but not positive influence. And so I think it's Dale Carnegie, right? No one cares about what you have to say until they know how much you care. How does someone know you care? They know you care by, one, you truly caring, right? And then you invest in the time to have a relationship with them and to learn from them. And after those three things, then are you in a position to correct? So my teenage son, let's use an example because this is a good example for me. He's older now. He's out of the house, but he was a rough teenager. It was really rough. And we found ourselves wanting to correct him all the time. And guess what? Our capital was, our leadership capital with him. It was in the negative. We saw him as a problem. I know I saw him as a problem. My thought was, and this is sad to say and admit, but anyone listening, if you don't see this in your parenting, you're probably not self-aware enough, and it's probably there and you don't realize it. Okay. But in most cases, we're frustrated with our kids when they're not doing what's right because how it reflects on us. I had the mentality of, dude, you need to shape up and start acting. And then once you do that, then I'll be more affectionate. Then I'll be more loving. Then I'll have a relationship with you. But until you correct it, translation, I'm going to withhold love from you until you do what I want you to do. That's the game we were playing. And how does a person react in that manner, especially a teenager? They push further away. Yeah, they push further away. You don't give a shit about me. You just want me to do what you told. And they're right? Because we see them as obstacles or problems, not as humans, not as amazing people that have a divine nature that is capable of greatness. We lost sight of it. And so it wasn't until I went with, no, he's actually awesome. And I'm going to focus on having a relationship with him and learn what makes him tick and what all these other things. And only after all that will I step into a place of trying to correct him. And here's the unfortunate part. In the corporate world, I can't count how many times, Steve, I've had this conversation where someone's like, oh, I need to coach someone around something. And I go, how's your relationship with them? And they're like, it sucks. I'm like, got it. Good luck. What do you mean good luck? Yeah, your coaching is all going to go south. It's all, you've already lost the game. What do you mean? I need to correct them. Yeah. Well, you should have been trying to develop a relationship and trust with them for the last year first. Right. And you have the gall to come to the table with zero relationship and tell them what they should or should not be doing. Good luck. Most people will not listen to you. And so you've already lost. Right? So you have to be in a position of positive influence.
So that's interesting because I've never thought about that being the same way at home. And I'll be the first to admit that, I use a lot of control at the house. I've been working on that a lot more, but I do use it. And just to let you know, my situation with my three youngest is that they all, ADHD, whatever, but they are wired hot, right? And I'm going to, they are wired hot. My son, Dominic, 6 years old, right? I'll just use him as an example in the cleaning the bedroom. Absolute worst thing that you could ever ask this boy to do, right? He clean a room. What?
Lose their mind.
We got to clean. So, of course, we try and keep a nice house. And, every now and again, you give them that much autonomy. We're going to have an ant trail go from the front door straight to his room and back again, right? Carrying chunks of whatever out. So when you're dealing with that, kind of situation, and that's hypothetical, there's some really real ones I could give you. But so you got this kid, you're wanting to give him autonomy in your own home. And we're working up this pyramid, which I'm going to have to look this up. I've never seen it before, but we're working up this pyramid. When is the right time to go, no, it's just because we're going to keep a clean house and I said so? Or is there a right time? I guess I should ask.
I don't know if there's ever a right time. Let me say it this way, because I'm trying to relate it back to corporate America. Are there times sometimes where you might rush in on your team and say, guys, we're working all night. I know it sucks. I need you to double down. Let's just go. There are going to be moments. The question is do you have the capital with that team to be able to pull that number? Or are we already in the negative?
Yeah,
right?
That's a good call.
So sometimes if we have a really strong relationship, right, and we've established trust, right, and we've done the other things, can I lash out on my kids sometimes, right, unfairly, and not have major negative repercussion? Absolutely. Is it the ideal state, or do I need to? I don't know. Actually, I still think even in that case, the standard, well, let me say it this way, Steve. Is it about the room?
Never about the room.
Right? As a parent, what's your primary objective?
It's to raise wholesome and healthy kids.
Got it.
And adulthood, of course.
Yeah. It's never about the room, right? So in most cases, when we double down on the tactic and we say, damn it, room needs to be clean, we're undermining the larger objective of what we're wanting. So how do we get the room clean? Now, I'm not saying we don't hold people accountable because there's natural consequences for not following rule set. Absolutely hold them accountable. They have to have the results of those actions, right? So they learn, right, of what the cost is of inaction or, improper action. But that's it. And we hold the line and we hold people accountable accordingly. But we're doing that with what intent? To develop the individual. And we lose sight of the tactical. We lose sight of the strategic, for the sake of the tactical win, right? So in corporate America, what does this look like? This is the project.
Right.
This is the budget. This is whatever metric is for the month. And we double down and we move into a command and control to ensure that tactical win. But by doing that, we do what? We undermine the development of the person actually doing the work. And we lose sight of the strategic win, which is what? The individual learning, the individual growing, which in the long run will benefit the organization at the same exact time. Now, there's something I said there that is really critical. In the long run. It has to be a short, long run in the transactional world of corporate America, right? Like,
Right.
most of us aren't nonprofit organizations focused on developing people, right? So 20 years later, they can be, pull a profit. No, that doesn't work, right? The gap has to be small enough that we're developing the person. It's in line with the benefit of the org. But if you lose sight of that, you're just going to see people as cogs in the process. They're going to feel like they're cogs in the process. And yes, the room will get clean. And yes, the project will win. But you'll constantly have to be managing people for the tactical wins all the time. And you'll get overrun as a leader. And you can't have margin. And all these employees, they never listen because you've taught them to just be pawns in your game, right? And we set the tone as an org from that perspective. Does that resonate?
It does. It does. That definitely leaves us on a good key. I want to get you to your wife and kids tonight, Kipp. So I think we're going to go ahead and end her there. But just to kind of round this out, what all are you working on currently, and where can people reach out to you at?
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Yeah. I mean, I'm a chief people officer for a technology consulting firm in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I do coaching on the side. And probably the best way to reach out to me is just on Instagram at Kipp Sorensen, or even kippsorensen.com. I do some webinars, some free webinars as well as like coaching. I have a coaching masterclass that I plan to roll out actually next month for a 3 hours a day session. And we've done some leadership retreats at our lake house in the past. We'll do those again, but just kind of mixing it up a little bit. So those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you spending the time with us tonight, and all the great insight, man. And we're going to have to keep on catching up on your progress with these retreats and master classes. So appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Appreciate it, man.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the forge.